Good evening. I greet you from Northern California, from unceded Coast Miwok territory at the edge of the Pacific Ocean, in the long embrace of Mount Tamalpais on this rainy night, the 6th of January, an extraordinary day in the life of the world and the life of this country. And I am immensely grateful to participate in this peaceful, abiding winter Ango hosted or convened by Upaya Zen Center. It is a great pleasure to be here tonight and to be in the company of the Buddhas and ancestors on the great traditions, and particularly to come from the ground of gratitude for the opportunity to practice meditation and mindfulness and engaged commitment, compassionate action in these times, in this world. So Ango, winter Ango, is a time, and traditionally a time of peaceful abiding, Ango, peaceful abiding, from the dating back to the time of the Buddha, and gathering together during the rainy season to examine the heart and mind, to be together in community, and to enter through the Gateless Gate into the field of limitless practice. The great way has no gate, yet there are 1,000 paths. Once you pass the barrier, cross the threshold, step in. You walk the universe alone. This from the 12th century Mumonkan, Koan, the Gateless Gate, the text that we're studying for this month of practice. I love to remember another way to describe what it means to enter into or through the Gateless Gate into the heart of the great matter, or the heart of practice. In Japan, Katagiri Roshi often reminded us that when we come together in this way, we say we become sorin. Sorin means forest, thicket. And I love this as a person who has the privilege to work the living land and be worked by the living land. Forest, thicket, sorin indicates a mixed forest of all different trees growing together, sharing a root system, taking up nourishment and giving it back. Face to face, we practice and experience the Buddhas and ancestors of old and of the present moment. Face to face, body to body, mind to mind, nature to nature, and true nature to true nature. So beginning with gratitude includes, especially in these times, recognition of the privilege and the great gift of human life. Gratitude for the gift of life. And matching that gratitude for the gift of life together to be alive in dangerous times, perilous times, really, as we've so fully felt today. Gratitude for this gift to be alive in perilous times, and also gratitude for the awareness of the brevity of this opportunity. So in Ango, both gratitudes are very strong, and Buddhas and ancestors of old, born and unborn, born and to be born, come and join us. The great road of Buddha ancestors is not concerned with inside or outside. We've been following the awakened way for lifetime after lifetime. How can we hold views that are inside and outside the way of awakening? So for me, this is vivid and grounded teaching, not holding views. and especially to be practicing at Upaya Zen Center in the embrace and in the mind of the Zen Peacemaker's Order. Our first vow in practice period is to bear witness to all that is. And I know Roshi Joan will speak about the three tenets, the three great tenets, but I wanted to begin with witness, what it means to witness what we as a nation in the United States of America, in North America, have witnessed today. Both great surprise and the deep, effective, mysterious working of democratic advocacy. To have Reverend Warnock from Ebenezer Baptist Church, Dr. Martin Luther King's church, become a senator-elect today, along with John Ossoff from Georgia, for many of us is a great culmination of a long road. And I understand not everyone may be feeling this way. And yet I want to acknowledge that this is significant. We're bearing witness to change, to opening and closing of eras, to passing through Gateless Gate. And in that witness period, we keep our wits about us. To witness is to see with open eyes, with the internal eye and the external eye, and not turn away from what we see, lifetime after lifetime, and to hold in our witnessing great dichotomies, great imbalance, the truth of what it means in these times to serve as a spirit warrior or peaceful, pacifist warrior, a fierce spiritual person, to be willing to both be blind and not know where we're going, and also to be a seer, to not see and to be a seer in our times, to be willing to hold the paradox of woundedness and the capacity to heal when we settle ourselves on the self and let the great life force bloom. And in all of this, to remember the rare opportunity and gift we have to be unsui, cloud and water wanderers together in the great sky above a burning world. So this is where we find ourselves today. And in this recognition, grounding, coming into peaceful abiding in the forest thicket, there is also recognition that we're living in extraordinary times. 1 year ago, pretty much exactly a year ago, I had the deep pleasure of being present at Upaya Zen Center for Winter Ongo in 2020, and thus began a year of extraordinary truth and revelation. And now a year later, we are living in a country here in North America where 21.1 million cases of coronavirus are rampant. And as of a few hours ago, 369,135 human souls have crossed the Great Divide to join the vast majority of the blessed dead. And I will wager that in our Sangha tonight, there are many who are carrying the truth of these times, the insignia, the mark, and the recognition, the memory, the grief, and the celebration of lives of those we've loved. I know that's true for me. A very dear friend today entered into the fire of decomposition. He died 10 days ago, and this is his day of revolution into the next form. So I know that many of us have not been able to celebrate in the way we may want to, and yet here we are, holding the truth of our times and celebrating, finding joy, although we know the facts. Practicing mindfulness in each moment of our daily lives, we can cultivate real peace, not a matter of discussion, real peace with clarity determination, and patience, we sustain a life of action and dedicated meditation and become genuine instruments of peace. This is a statement from Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh. With clarity, determination, and patience, we sustain a life of action and become real instruments of peace. And we are needed in these times. Therefore, we step back from a busy world, from a world of intricacy, complication, engagement, numerous possibilities, to find peaceful abiding, to generate intimate language, eternal, intimate, pure, and joyful. And in this stepping back, in the gift of Anga, whether or not you're part of the convened Sangha, every being in the 10 directions listening tonight, you are needed to hold your ground, to find new ground, to bear witness to how you are called to both pull back from busyness and find your deep essence. Hold up Akshobhya's mirror, as teacher Joanna Macy instructed us at Upaya on the advent of the summer solstice in 2020. She reminded us of the great Buddha, Akshobhya, traveling between worlds in the bardos, holding up the clear mirror wisdom, and so that all beings in the 10 directions could see where we are in the world and not turning away from that bright mirror, mind of mirror. So this is an extraordinary time. Tonight, the 6th of January, in the Christian tradition, this is 12th night, the end of the sacred days of around the winter solstice, and in the celebration of changing of light and the birth of Christ in the Christian tradition. This is a day of epiphany, of new vision, and it can be a day of abject terror, surprise, and grief. Epiphany is not only bright, joyful light. So today we are together on the 6th day of January. We are holding up the mirror, and the time to do, the time is always right. That's today, to do what is right. Words from Dr. King. I remember those words being written by children at the Edible Schoolyard on old aprons. They made a clothesline all the way across the garden, and they wrote sayings. They are students at Martin Luther King Junior Middle School in Berkeley, California, and they chose in this month of January, they chose in Dr. King's month, in his month of birth and passing, they chose to look deeply at his sayings. And that one I remember flapping above the garden: the time is always right to do what is right, what is in Ho'oponopono, in correct alignment, and calling us. So this is the right time to be together. And it's the right time to ground ourselves, to settle ourselves on ourselves, and let the force of our life bloom, surprisingly, from old roots coming up through dry ground and finding new expression. And so last of all, I want to say, I want to turn toward the light, which is very much what is happening in this time too. Right now, just on Friday, the light begins to lengthen finally. We've been at a standstill of sun and dark, a very dark, quiet, pulled in time of the year. Now the light begins to change and lengthen and spread. And again, I remember 1 year ago in the initiation of Winter Ango practice period, we'll have to travel like we did a year ago. On the 10th of January, we traveled 3 hours in silence to the heartland of Chaco Canyon, 10,000 years of embodied culture in the Tewa world, deep in the mountains of Chaco Canyon, the center of the ancient world. We made pilgrimage. While we gathered for Winter Ango, we began with this pilgrimage to the ancient heart of the matter, and found a village large and complex beyond imagination, 4-story buildings, tight, beautifully formed stone buildings, 700 rooms, intricate, astronomy, and the whole landscape laid out in complete alignment and connection with the heavenly movement of the sun and the moon and the stars, spirals of solstice and equinoctial, light and dark, that ancient dance. And around Pueblo Alto at the top of Chaco Canyon, a great northern road going home, 30 feet wide to and miles long, going home to the ancestral world. So I am a grounded practitioner, but I have my mind also in the stars. And so tonight, gratitude for the living earth, for a time of peaceful dwelling, for the heavenly stars, and the force of your practice, and the willingness in community not to turn away from all that is. Thank you for the invitation to practice with you and to be together in peaceful abiding.
Wendy, thank you so much, truly. Ango, as Wendy said, means peaceful dwelling. And she reminded us of the 3 tenets that my teacher, Glassman Roshi, and also my teacher, Jishu Angyo Holmes, felt was so important to instantiate, to make real, to bring into our marrow at this time. Now, both Jishu and Bernie are gone. They're ancestors now. But some of us carry their inspiration, their teachings, their lineage forward. And to bring this capacity to be really wide open, to sit with not knowing, and then to bear witness, the capacity to come alongside, to reject nothing, to be present for. And from this experience of not knowing and bearing witness arises compassionate action. So why do we come into this kind of retreat? Traditionally, this is Vesa, Vasa, a time when we spend 3 months over the summer period during the rains, if we were traditional Buddhists, in deep practice. And at Upaya and in other places, that 3-month period is actually experienced a little differently. We take a month in the winter, a month in the spring, and a month in the fall. Ango, peaceful dwelling, to come home, to be in a structure. And as Wendy shared with us, this image of this mixed forest, so rin, to do it together, even with our differences, so that we can begin to drop down to who we really are, where we really are, and what we're made of. So the title of our talk is A Koan for Our Time. And you never know when you make a title up, but today was a koan. It was a public case. It was a case where the first Black senator from the state of Georgia became elected. It's historical. And I can speak to this as someone whose family came from Savannah, Georgia, and being raised in a very racist context. I know Wendy knows this as well. How powerful it has been for us as now elders in the world to have come from the roots of racism, and at a young age to wake up to that peril and to have worked for the kind of democracy that is so Rin, that's a mixed forest, that is radically inclusive. And why is it important for us to even consider koans, this unusual historical collection or collections, but we're using one at this time, the Mumonkan. Why is it interesting or important for us to explore? And I think now it's, so appropriate. And a few things about koans. The word itself means public case. And these collections of koans, of which there are probably 8 main ones, they're sayings and actions of Zen masters and their disciples or other interlocutors that are used to actually test the depth of a student's or of a practitioner's realization. They're kind of a litmus paper. They're something that you dip into the psyche, and you begin to see what kind of accretions make it very difficult for us or for you or for another to have an unmediated experience of reality as it is. Now, this was developed during this process, during the Tang Dynasty in around the 7th century to the 10th century. And the collection that we're exploring together this month is called the Mumonkan, which is the gateless barrier. So this is kind of a paradox, but it's also a barrier is a kind of a checkpoint. It's a place that we encounter, like, for example, wanting to do our own thing, which is so Western, instead of being engaged in a common action, in a collective action, being an embodied community of soul Rin, of different species, together making a whole forest. The collection known as the Mumonkan was put together by Mumon or Wumen in the 13th century, I think around 1228. And in it, there are 48 koans, 48 of these public cases or stories. And probably the most famous and also the most frustrating and least understood, and the thing that really gets some koan practitioners completely hung up, is the very first in the collection. But before I begin to move into that first koan in the Mumonkan, I'd like to just read a little bit from Mumon's preface, because it's so powerful and so beautiful. He says, Buddhism makes mind its foundation, and no gate its gate. This takes us right into what Bernie taught so deeply. What is it to sit with radical openness, the gate completely open, in not knowing? And then Mumon goes, well, how do you pass through this no gate? He continues, it is said that things coming in through the gate can never be your own treasures. Whatever is gained from external circumstances will perish in the end. This is a radical statement Mumon is making. It is said that things coming in through the gate can never be your own treasures. What is gained from external circumstances will perish in the end. I mean, Mumon lays the responsibility for realization on each of us. It's really quite an obstacle to dissolve and to let ourselves be dissolved by. And then Mumon says, well, however, saying this is already raising waves where there's no wind. In other words, he's saying, look, I shouldn't even be saying this. He goes on, it's like cutting unblemished skin. As for those who try to understand through other people's words, including his, they are striking at the moon with a stick, scratching a shoe, whereas it is the foot that itches. What concern have they with the truth? I mean, Mumon is really, in a way, making us consider what really is our life is about. And then he goes on, in the summer of the first year of Jotai, Ekai, that's Mumon, was in the Ryosho temple and as head monk. He worked with the monks using the cases of the ancient masters as brickbats to batter the gate and lead them on according to their respective capacities. The text was written down not according to any scheme, but just to make a collection of 8 cases. So, in a funny way, the Koan is sort of a farrago, just a kind of mixed up thing. But it begins with this really tough assignment. Each of us has to do this. I cannot meditate for you. Wendy cannot meditate for you. Each of you has to do your own work. And then Mumon says, a person of great determination will unflinchingly push their way straight forward, regardless of all dangers. And then even an 8-armed demon cannot hinder her. Even the 4 sevens of the West. And, when I read that line years ago, I was like, what is the 4 sevens of the West? And recently I figured it out. It's the 28 Indian ancestors and the 2 threes, which is the next part of the sentence, which are the 6 Chinese ancestors. The 2 threes of the East would beg for their lives. If one has no determination, then it will be like catching a glimpse of a horse galloping past the window. In the twinkling of an eye, it will be gone. So I love this introduction. It's so rich for us. And this is really not only about the opportunity that we have in the midst of these perilous times, these surprising times, to actually drop down, to exhale, to stop, to look deeply. And as I did this afternoon, to watch myself upregulate, to watch concern and distress. And then I pulled back the camera of the moment and looked at the great landscape of history. And I was reminded by something I heard His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, say once. Someone asked His Holiness, well, Your Holiness, what do you think about the French Revolution? And His Holiness said, well, it's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. So I see my friend from Egypt, Egypt's history. We think of the Great Pyramids, all of the ups and downs of since the time of the pyramids. I think of my friend who is online today, sitting in Mexico at this very moment, in Mexico City. Again, the Aztec Empire rising and collapsing. Wendy mentioned Chaco Canyon, this extraordinary archaeological site in the middle of our country, difficult to access, in the middle of this sort of vast emptiness, so to speak. And to see these enormous buildings, the kivas, the villages built in relation to the rising and the setting of the sun, the moon, Venus, and so forth. And just understanding from the point of view of archaeoastronomy, the extraordinary persistence of those early astronomers sitting in this open space year after year, marking the changes in the cosmos and seeing the truth of change and also of pattern, of impermanence, and also of persistence. So earlier today, I used a term that I'm very, very fond of. The first time I heard it was from my dear friend and Wendy's dear friend, Kazuaki Tanahashi. The term is robaishin. How do we cultivate a grandmother's heart? You know, the heart that is deep and steady, that has been through the wars, that does not polarize, that has the arms to be able to hold everything. Just as today we held the election of two extraordinary men to the Senate, and also held the deep and historic disruption in our capital, in this nation. So the first case seems like an interesting koan for our time. It is Joshu's mu. So a monk asked Joshu, "Has a dog Buddha nature?" And Joshu responded this way, "Mu." Now, that's not what a cow says in this case. We'll look at what mu means from Joshu's perspective. So Joshu, very beloved and famous Zen master. He was born in 778 in the Common Era. And he was probably one of the most beloved masters in early China. He was deeply admired for his spirit. And he became a monk at a fairly young age, at the age of 18. And he stayed with his teacher, Nansen, for 40 years. 40 years. That is like Bodhidharma, a kind of commitment in a relationship. And when Nansen died, Joshu grieved for years. And finally, at the age of 60, he decided he would wander around. And so he went about China and he visited Zen teachers and many monasteries. And he always wanted the teachers, the abbots, to check his mind. But he was also checking the minds of the abbots. And finally, when Joshu was 80 years of age, he became the head of a small temple. And he sat. This was his place. And it was said that light shone around his mouth because he was so direct, so utterly pure, so simple. And he wasn't greedy about his mind or his practice. And moreover, he was very modest, and he had submitted, if you will, been obedient to awareness for a long, long time. So he became who he really was. And it said that Joshu died when he was 120, and that would make him indeed venerable. But what's interesting, he settled down when he was 80, so he had another 40 years of discovery. So the monk asks him one day, okay, does a dog have Buddha nature? And what is the monk saying? Now, one of the things about koan practice is that we become everything within the script or the field or the landscape of the koan. And what the monk seems to be saying is, I don't think I have Buddha nature. I don't think I've got it. And maybe we feel a little bit like that too, that we don't have the potential for awakening. And in a way, Joshu's story is the story of persistence. It's the story of showing up. It's the story of never abandoning the project, if you will. It's really a powerful, his history is a kind of powerful example for us, that we might feel that we don't have the mind of the Buddha, and that we maybe regard ourselves a little doggedly, not really adequate to meet the moment. But the monk had the guts to ask Joshu the question. I mean, what he's saying, he's trying to figure something out. He's kind of saying, I can't access it. I just can't penetrate it. I can't perceive the awakened nature of others or even my own. And just imagine yourself for a moment sitting in front of old Joshu and asking that question, does a dog have Buddha nature? And Joshu, this kind of inscrutable face, goes mu, which means no or not. Now, from the point of view of Chinese Buddhism, all things are moving toward enlightenment at varying velocities. So it's kind of a weird thing for Joshu to say. So what do you think Joshu is really saying? I mean, the monk in a certain way is saying, I want to be free from these mental tangles, from this nervousness, this fear, these insecurities, these doubts that are plaguing me. The monk is struggling, and we're struggling, and we struggle with mu. I remember my own experience of working with this koan. I just thought, oh my God, everything mu, in breath mu, out breath mu. I remember talking with Ankyo Roshi once about mu, and she said, just paint the whole world mu. No, not. That would seem like a kind of radical exercise in negation. But it's a very interesting exercise, because what is not, what is no. And I remember sitting with this koan, and I don't mean to spoil it for you, but just to say, at a certain point, I had this incredible moment where I realized this exercise of painting the whole world mu, or being in this experience where everything was mu, every thought that arose, mu, every interaction, mu, every opinion, mu. No, not this, not that. And then I had this moment where I realized there was no separate self. It was an experience of a kind of breakthrough into fundamental non-separateness. So instead of life or mu becoming a kind of field of impossibility, what opened up was life and mu became a field of possibility. It was so incredibly liberating. It was so paradoxical. It was though saying not or no, not this, not that, no, no. And suddenly, everything flipped into not knowing on one hand, but possible on the other. I mean, can you feel it right now? I think it's important to just sense into that possibility, to live within the possible. You know, a thought arises, we follow the thought, suddenly I'm right, and that's the trap. We're caught in it. Then the space of mu is like a kind of plow or wind. It's a hand that suddenly frees us from the grip of our opinions. This morning when we were in our Enso with Wendy, she reminded us of me using this image of an acupuncture needle penetrating into the meridian of liberation. Actually, that's an image that I got from Shohaku Okamura. Thank you. Mu is that acupuncture needle. So we say it's a barrier, but it's also a kind of checkpoint. And it's a kind of frontier. It's a place where, you know, in the experience of our practice now, we actually check our mind. We check our experience. We investigate. We notice how much I, me, my mind, the small self grips us. Our opinions hold us. And then we bring mu in. Another way, and I think it was Aiken Roshi in his gloss on this koan, he said, also, it's like something that you would check at the door, like your coat. You would kind of leave it at the door. Leave your opinions at the door. So it will be the case in our experience over these days in practice period. It's really inevitable that we will bump up against the small self. And that gives us an opportunity to begin to ask, who am I? Who am I really? I mean, these are exactly the barriers that the great ancestors encountered. They all went through this. And it is through the medium of practice that we begin to allow ourselves to drop down into an unmediated relationship with things just as they are. Finally, going back to Sorin, to what Wendy spoke about earlier, it's to understand that in Zen, our emphasis in practice is on intimacy. And a practice period such as this is a laboratory for intimacy. What is your laboratory for intimacy? It might be with your dog, or it might be with your partner or your students. But it's to understand that the experience of intimacy is one that is fundamentally characterized by deep courage, by trust, and by faith, and also by determination. That is the ability to persevere through the likes and the dislikes, through caring and not caring, through our irritabilities, and finally, in the experience of Mu, if you will, to open to this deep identification with all beings and all things is not separate from who we really are. So today we saw a lot of objectification in our nation's capital. I hope that those of us who are in this practice period can, in a way, take this as a kind of lesson to not polarize either against other or ourselves, but to allow ourselves to be with not knowing and to bear witness, so that our response to the world is characterized by deep compassion, by kindness, by openness, and by courage. So I hope we can meet this reality called Mu. Thank you for your practice.
Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless, I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless, I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless, I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Thank you, Roshi and Wendy. We'll see everyone at 7:45 for everything said.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Roshi.